Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Blind Ambition with Jack Kelly. It's your friend Rick from Blind, and today I'm going to introduce you all to Disha Patel, who's a product and business leader with more than 12 years of professional experience, including as an engineer, management consulting strategist. She's built successful products for customers, small and medium sized businesses, and accountants across highly regulated industries. This is consumer tech, financial technology, and commerce, and companies like Cash App, Intuit, Amazon, and Cummins. Thanks for coming on the show, Disha.
Thank you for having me. So great to be here.
So, can you walk us through your career in a little bit more detail?
Yeah. So I've taken a winding path from engineering to management consulting and strategy to product. And so what I tell people is I deeply love the product craft and I don't take it for granted because that's not where I started. I saw a lot of other things and I found my way to product quite intentionally and I absolutely love it. I started off in the Midwest at Cummins Engines, which is a diesel and natural gas manufacturing company. I used to code electronic control modules for engines. This was like back in the day when, if people remember this, but there was this thing called IoT and sensors. That's essentially what it was. Like if you think about an engine, sensors give you input about different parts of the engine, and then you code algorithms within the ECU to manage the fuel efficiency and the performance of the engine. It was an amazing time. But one thing that I realized when I was at Cummins is it was quite far down. So I didn't know why we were building particular engine technology or why we were working on X or Y product. I was quite disconnected from the strategy part of the business. And Cummins overall was also really large organizations. And I always wondered, like, how does my piece fit in? Some of that thinking led me to go get an MBA because I'm like, well, there's more than the engineering function, and I want to be a part of sort of like the bigger picture. So went to Yale for an MBA. After that, I wasn't quite sure which industry I wanted to work in. And what I mean by that is, did I want to do finance or energy and environment, telecom? And so I thought, let's do management consulting because that's where you would have more training around structured thinking and communication, influence, strategic thinking, and you could explore different industries. At the same time, when I was at Yale, our dean would always talk about training leaders for business and society at a global scale. So I kind of took that to heart. I want to be a global leader and I do want to go overseas. So I had to find a place where I didn't have to significantly sacrifice my salary. And so I wanted to go work in Asia Pacific to sort of expand my perspective. So I chose Australia and BCG.
So what I'm hearing,
Yeah,
I'm curious about this. So
yeah,
you're a woman in the Midwest
yeah.
working like in a very industrial thing, which this might be sexist coming out. You wouldn't think that would be like something you would do. So that was probably very brave, and you probably had to be strong to stand out because I'd imagine mostly men there, right? And then you pick yourself up and go to Australia. That's wild. For people who are listening, how do you get that inner strength to say, you know what, I'm going to maybe go into this male dominated area and I'm going to do my best and do a great job. But then I'm going to say, hey, I want to do something else. I'm going to go to Yale. All right, now I'm going to go to Australia. I mean, that takes a lot of guts and courage, right, Rick?
So it's a great question. One thing I'll say is I give a lot of kudos to my colleagues and leaders at Cummins who always made me feel nothing but respected, right? Like I remember these times when I would be working with folks who were in the diesel worker unions and such, and I'd have these steel-toed boots and hard hats. I'd go to Pennsylvania and Virginia to install these engines into various OEMs. So it was very, very male dominated, but I've always felt respected and not intimidated because we were always focused on the work. Right. In the Midwest, I was new as an entity, sort of quote unquote, for a lot of people. But when I showed up with a certain degree of confidence, preparedness, good questions, and a willingness to learn and partner with them and serve them because they were all my customers, they would engage with you quite well, actually. And if anything, rather than going in with a preconceived notion of I'm the woman here and I might be in the minority, I just went in to do really great work and didn't register anything else, for better or worse. I just took away so much from that experience. And I think that built confidence, right? I knew the reality was that I was in the minority, but it didn't affect me in any way. And I decided to just go through it. And in doing so, I built more confidence and courage. Right? Confidence and courage comes when you're moving through a situation with a flutter in your heart, knowing that you're one of the few ones to do it. Doing that work is a prerequisite to getting more of the confidence and courage. Like it doesn't come before, if that makes sense. And I think the other thing was I had this internal voice of you can do more, you can do better. And I think sometimes you have that if you come as an immigrant, you don't really take anything for granted. And there's a bit of a voice that's like, make this count. Prepare well, don't take this opportunity for granted. And with this voice of you can do more, you can do better, I was propelled to find what that better is. Because I don't even know what the next thing was. This drew me to, okay, what are some other people doing? They're going to business school. Great. What are some options here? Let's go investigate. Let's talk to some people. I had to like seek out and find them. And then once I went to business school, not that many of my classmates even went overseas, but I just had this strong idea in my mind of I wanted to be an expansive leader that had experienced many different contexts. Because I think you get a lot of wisdom from having experienced those different contexts. And so I'm like, all right, the world's really big. Asia Pacific was booming. Let's go do business there. That's what led me to Australia. But the reality is when you pick up and go somewhere with 5 boxes and no network, you then have to build friends all over again, make sense of how do you get your license and the renting and all of the daily logistics of life you just figure out. In doing that, because you don't have a choice, now you're in that situation. And so I think one other lesson here, it's fine to put yourself in a situation where your heart is fluttering and you're a bit uncertain, but in navigating that, on the other side, you will have more courage and confidence. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. I love it. Just out of just this sounds kind of like woo-woo kind of stuff, but when you say the
Yeah.
voice in your head, is that kind of more of affirmations or manifestations where you're just kind of talking to yourself or you have that voice pushing you to achieve what you really want to achieve?
I think it's more, I just want to really leverage that capability for as much impact as possible. I'm drawn more towards leveraging my existing capability well, making it grow even more by taking on bigger challenges. And so when I'm drawn to a challenge or something new, it's not I want to make money, but it's more like, my God, imagine how much I'll learn and imagine how much I'll grow. And that's the North Star that I keep prioritizing for. And I think there's a bit of an absence of fear. Again, for better or worse, I don't know where this comes from. In all honesty, I don't get fazed by rejection. I'm a hustler in that I treat a lot of things like a sales funnel where I'm like, all right, I want to break in here. I will go ham and hustle. It doesn't matter if 10 people say no, I will just keep on going. And so I think confidence also, to your earlier point, comes from a faith in yourself that you will put in the work. It doesn't matter what the outcome is, but a belief that you will work as hard as you can. And then whatever the outcomes are, it's fine. What I've learned through all these experiences, if I put in my 100% on something, even if something doesn't work out, I have no regrets because I've done the best I can. And I just am able to move on after that. And so that's also the prerequisite to doing that. It was a bit of a faith in yourself. And second is an ability to tune out the noise. If there are doubters around me, my natural default is to be like, I will prove you wrong. It's recognizing your internal dialogue, your external context, and how it's impacting you. And managing through, now that I know what drives confidence after a few rounds of going through some of the hard things, I remind myself, well, you've done this in the past. Come on now, how hard could this be? Let's go. And so it's you become your own champion in a way.
I really appreciate your lesson. I'm a PR person, and a lot of folks have trouble. It literally gives them the worst fear in their life of public speaking. But I choose to do it every day, and that's how I earn my living. And I've had a lot of folks say, like, oh, Rick, like, how did you have this much confidence? I mean, to your point, Disha, right? I certainly wasn't born with this skill in terms of I'm going to go up and be a great orator.
Yeah.
Instead, I had to learn, right? And going to be quite candid, make a lot of mistakes, like be awkward a lot of times, right? And now you realize, like, oh, that was really awkward. And you could feel it in your bones. And I think back and I remember those times and I say, well, I certainly didn't like that. That wasn't pleasant. I now know not to say or do that type of thing. And it's more about the repetition, taking a step back for those that might not be quite there yet, that are willing to take those steps and put themselves out there again and again. Um, you know, are there any kind of training programs or development programs or things that you would recommend that folks might raise their hand?
Yeah. It's a great question. In these transitions that I've done from engineering to strategy to product, and even in the product path, the hustle and the hard work is one piece. But the thing that I've always saw from the very beginning is taking pride in your craft, whatever your craft is, right? Before I became a management consultant, I remember in business school, we would have these consulting clubs where we would endlessly practice casing with each other. And there was no substitute to just doing the reps, to getting the casing partner, to doing the coffee chats with the current consultant. And in doing so, not only are you hustling and networking, but also getting better at thinking. And that serves you well when you join the company and through the interview process. In product, there's so many resources, learning from existing practitioners. They also share templates. And so I lap them up quite constantly. And a lot of this, no one really told me to do it. It's a self-driven hunger to improve, but it was actually game-changing because you're evolving your craft and refining it. In doing so, you're getting better as an individual, not just as a leader in a particular company. And in getting better, you're building this confidence where if you wanted to go and network and break into something else, that knowledge building and the refinement of your craft and the confidence that comes with it goes with you. Right. So it's like playing the long game for both yourself and your organization while you're there.
I want to dig into this concept of playing the long game with your career.
Yeah.
Often on Blind, people are thinking about very tactical things like, well, the review cycle is coming up in 2-3 months. I would love to earn a promotion. How am I going to complete this packet that gives me the best shot of landing the next job level? Or perhaps you get the pay stub on the 15th and you're disappointed by what it is, or you're reading a news headline and seeing how folks at another company are earning so much more than you. And you suddenly start to think, well, now I'm going to open up a job search and try to land the next compensation. Can you give us some advice for how to kind of break out of that kind of thinking?
Yeah, great question. There's a lot of general advice out there around, you should be doing a job, managing upwards, so on. And that's all true, of course. The meta point for yourself, though, is day to day when you're doing the job, you're practicing a certain craft and you're thinking about certain things. Is that enjoyable for you? Then there's your context and the people that you partner with. Are they at the top of their crafts? Are you deriving a lot of joy from practicing with them? Because I think that's a big part of your daily satisfaction, product development in particular, as a team sport, because it's a lot of partnership. The third piece is the leadership structure. Are they a champion? Will they actually enable your growth in the longer term? And so there's all these factors that make up how you feel when you're doing your job day to day. So let's evaluate for a second, do these feel like they're in the right place? If they're in the right place, and if you want to get a promotion, that's great. With the next role, rather than sort of anchoring on the compensation and such, which is, do you feel like this is a company that you want to grow with? Are you really passionate about the product? Do you have a vision for where you would take the product if you were to take this next step? And if you have really good answers for all of that, by all means, continue. Make your manager your partner in your promotion process. But I want to make a few meta points about promotion and compensation, which tie back to solving for refining your craft and your growth as like the North Star. And what I mean by that is, doing a craft, people need to distinguish very clearly when they're going through a promotion between developing their craft and doing their work really well versus optics. Where true confidence comes from is in doing the work really well and evolving your craft. Where a true sense of belongingness and respect and team comes from is being known as a person who gets stuff done, who's an honest broker, who's a great thought partner and a team member, right? And so I would over-index on solving for that because that actually is also what will help you in the longer term when you go elsewhere outside of this company. Managing optics and managing up is really, really important, but I would be very deliberate in sort of teasing the two apart and not over-investing on the optics piece, like, throwing people under the bus or like taking credit or da-da-da. I would be very conscious of the two because solving for the former will help you in the long term, and it actually is what builds confidence. And if you can walk, like if you think you're actually delivering at the next level, but you're not getting recognized at this company, you've now built the confidence because you've done the job well, and you can start networking and get elsewhere. The second piece I wanted to sort of reflect on is learning and earning. If in a particular company, if you think you're going, like, are you learning or earning or both? If you're doing both, that's exceptional. If you're learning but not earning as much, but if you're in a flow state where you have all of the things that I was previously mentioning, where you're doing meaningful work with exceptional colleagues, it's okay if the earning takes a bit of a back seat. And even like the promotion stuff won't really matter because you're just enjoying the work that much. And the promotion will happen. If you're doing neither, then it's just like, what's the point of any of this? Perhaps it's good to reflect on, is it the context or is it me? Ideally, you've always taken ownership of your own learning and you can figure out a way how. But if the context isn't enabling, then it's time to walk. It's like, lastly, I'll just say it's always good to keep testing the market, particularly now with AI, with all these sort of new types of jobs. I've been seeing a lot of fractional CPOs and product leaders and advisor type roles popping up. People who succeed in the long term feel like, one, what is giving me deep joy when I work? Second, what story am I telling in the longer arc of my career? And in light of this context where there's so much disruption and change, how do I need to reinvent myself?
We dig into what you said about crafting a story for your career. What do you mean by that? How would you recommend that someone gets started in deciding what their story might be?
Yeah, great question. Number one is to not undersell what you've done up until now. You're your own best champion. Think critically and deeply about the impact that you've made, what you've learned, and what got you here, and frame it the right way. Like, number two is from where you're at today, again, thinking deeply about what types of work do I like to do, focusing on a product at this point. What products do I want to play with? Which leaders' opinions and points of view do I really like, do I really resonate with on social media? And I might want to work with, and they might want to grow in their organization. So these are some pieces. Again, this is all thinking deeply about what you like and enjoy. And another piece, what is the market rewarding these days, right? If you want a career that is lucrative and to be quite practical, what skill sets will you need to have? Sometimes a lot of people will come to me and say they want to switch over from being engineering to product, from engineering to product, from strategy to product. I think it's a great thing to do, as I've done. But in doing so, sometimes what might happen is you may not get to that change that you want in the very next jump. So think about how you might have an intermediate step and what might that step be? For example, if you want to switch over from business operations to product management, is it easier for you to get a product ops or a PMM type role, perhaps as a stop in between, and then it could be product? If you wanted to be a VC, could you start angel investing on the side and then get your reps in that way? And so I think getting quite creative about the paths that you might take to where you want to go. But again, the prerequisite to this is you need to not undersell the experiences that you've had, highlight the impacts and talk about it in a powerful way because you're your biggest champion, really. And leverage the power of the community and talk to people who've done what you've done or are 2 or 3 steps ahead of you, people who are your peers. I personally find a lot of clarity when I'm thinking with folks.
Disha, this is amazing. It's like one part Tony Robbins, getting motivated, right? Getting yourself in the game, getting in the zone. The other is a masterclass in how to navigate a career and being very thoughtful and methodical, but then also learning how to be brave and taking risks. And I love how like you're intertwining, right, Rick? Like all those things together, which is hard to do, but it seems like you have it. I don't know if this is coming out organically or you've been for years thinking it through, but for people who will be watching this, I think it's a great to-do list almost, like what to really think about, staying with a job, leaving a job, when is time to move, how to take intelligent, thoughtful risks, right? So these are all important things that what I find out, and Rick, you probably see this a lot as well, is that most people, and I hate to say it, do the opposite. They're ruminating. They're thinking back about everything they did wrong. And it's like, oh, woe is me. I'm going to go to the interview. It's not going to work out. Or I'm not good enough for this job. And they do the exact opposite of what you were saying. And that's what brings them down instead of having them succeed. And I think maybe one of the reasons why you were able to do all these interesting, cool things is you had that mindset and the guts to say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it happen. What you were saying is like, you take that risk, you succeed, you applaud that success, which gives you the fuel to go to the next one. And then it gives you more confidence and more confidence. And the person who doesn't take the chances, yeah, they just fall behind. I think this is like one of the most mission critical ways for people to kind of think and plan their careers for success and how to avoid all those negativities that bring you down. Right, Rick? Does that make sense?
Yes. I mean, In that vein, there's certainly folks out there where it's so easy to stay in your comfort zone and say, well, I'm a senior software engineer. I have been coding since, I was a kid, and this is what I love to do and what I want to do. And maybe they have no further ambitions of, trying out a different job function, even switching a company, or even actually getting on that promotion track to go beyond. Like for that, that's their terminal level, and they're kind of happy to stay with it. Is that something that's equally valid? How would you advise those folks?
It's a great question. If you love what you're doing, and I actually like when I look at a lot of these PMs who went to a school on the West Coast and started product management right out of college, I'm just like, man, I wish. I just didn't even know. So the through line in my career has been you can only aspire to that which you can see and internalize. And so, as an example, like when I came from India to Purdue for undergrad, I didn't know what Ivy League schools were. And they go, okay, let's go to Purdue because that's where one of my cousins went, and I just showed up. And then when I was at Purdue, everyone sort of joined manufacturing companies in and around the Midwest, like Caterpillar, Cummins, John Deere, and so on. There weren't many folks sort of going to California or getting an MBA right after. And so what I thought was normal at the time was to go and join Cummins. I was just mainly in the Midwest. Then I'm like, all right, this is what it is. And then slowly I learned what Ivy League schools are, that there's an MBA program. I didn't know Silicon Valley and product and all of this existed back in the day even. I didn't know product management was a craft until I went into it after Australia. And so in discovering these new things, it seemed like there was a bit of a pull and there was something that was like, that seems really cool. It wasn't as if that I knew what the steps were going to be way ahead of time, but I saw something new. I internalized that it was different and more interesting to me than what I was doing at the time. And I moved to the next thing. I know plenty of people who started as PMs, have sort of grown in their PM careers, and they're very, very happy. There's a talk right now among product circles around having people who are senior ICs and continue to deliver value by being a senior IC. That's perfect. If you love what you do, if you love your craft, and if you on a day-to-day basis can have a flow state where you love what you do, you have people you respect and you can think with, and you have leaders who are supportive and believe in you, perfect. And that's actually a great way of being. The crux of this is as long as you're honestly and fully sort of satisfied being in that state, that's great. The main thing sort of I'm trying to get at is it would be sad if you compromise because of fear or because of something that you thought wouldn't be well received. Take that chance for yourself.
I love your earlier framework that you mentioned about learning versus earning, right? In terms of being able to decide whether it's right to stay in a role, right? If you're learning, then perhaps it's still worthwhile to have that proximity to folks that you respect or that inspire you or that will teach you and invest in you those hard skills. Or are you earning, obviously, on a practical level? Are there any other kind of frameworks or things that you use to decide whether it's right to stay in a current role, stay in a current job function, stay in a current industry, or even stay in a current country?
Yeah. So on the company front, I think it's a few things. One is the work that you're doing, the scope of the work, the complexity of it. Are you happy and satisfied with it? And are you learning in your craft with that? Second is the people that you're working with. Do you respect and like to work with them? The third one is, are your leaders your champions? And will they carve the path for you to go to the next level? And the fourth one is a more meta point of like, is that the path you want to go down? If you're in a company for a certain amount of time, you have a good sense of what type of products are built, what is the culture. If you were to get promoted, what context would you work in? What types of responsibilities would you have? If you have the right conversations, it's fairly easy to also get what would the compensation delta be. And so having considered all that, even if you could get promoted and you had all these other factors, and so these are the set of factors. If you don't have one of those even, like if you don't have leadership support for your next level, that could be a reason why you may look elsewhere, right? Like if you are part of a culture where you're working on a really great product, but it gives you a lot of stress, it'll be sort of pushing a boulder up the hill, And so in that case, it could be a good choice to walk away. Now, there's pluses and minuses in every single context, right? So when people talk about like toxic culture, this or that, there's a spectrum. There's a spectrum of minor annoyances, etc., which are there everywhere versus true toxicity. So people shouldn't tolerate the true toxicity. especially if they've seen a few examples of it. But if there's pluses and minuses on, okay, well, this person likes that person, but they don't like me, etc., whatever, that happens. Process and bureaucracy happens everywhere. And I don't know if those are the reasons why people should walk away without giving things a chance.
Really appreciate that reminder. Maybe we kind of learn by example.
Yeah.
Was there a certain promotion that was challenging to earn or that you're most proud of? And how did you accomplish that?
Yeah. Um, the promotion from being a product lead on the investing product at Cash App and leading all of investing. So I joined as a second PM on the investing team, joined right when it was sort of the tailwinds from COVID were starting. My manager at the time, he got promoted to be the head of financial services at Cash App. I think it was a really meaningful time because one of the amount of work I got done with the team at the time. We launched multiple 0 to 1 products that brought millions of investors into the product. We grew balances, dealt with regulators and platforms and platform issues and external partners. My learning in this is I was already doing a lot of the work that I would have to do if I became the head of product for investing. I had demonstrated enough ambition and follow throughness. Like it's really important. If you want to take on bigger roles, you want to deliver extremely well on whatever is given to you to begin with. When Ryan, who was my lead at the time, we were working on stock and Bitcoin gifting and a few other features. I'd done a really great job at it, but it also demonstrated that I could do more. And so it became sort of like a natural step, but it just felt like a big transition. If I think back to it now, the amount of scope was absolutely insane. And I just feel very proud of the work that we did. And I wasn't quite focused on the promotion so much as just like making impact, doing right by the team, and just feeling very like fulfilled. And that's when the promotion happened. And so the advice around you should be doing the work they're going to be promoted into, that's definitely true. You want to make sure your team likes working with you and respects you if you're going to take on sort of a bigger role. What I loved about this is it sort of happened somewhat naturally.
I really admire your advice there, right? Because it almost seems like if you get caught up in just like the very tactical, like, I want to get a promotion, I need to do XYZ, or I need to match what's on a job ladder, you're almost not focusing on the hard skills or the necessary set of like experiences or the network that are going to champion you if you're just kind of following these abstract things on a career path. It's almost the journey. If you actually focus on impacts, the promotions, the compensation, the validation that you might seek otherwise will naturally come and follow, right? You don't have to pursue it for its own sake, but just remember that those are proof points. It's like milestones that, and you'll hit these naturally.
Yeah. 100%. And I just add to that, like my lead at the time did know that this was the next step and we had talked about it. So people need to know where your ambition is and where you want to go. But in addition to that, you just want to focus every day on doing an extremely good job, not letting your team down, and just like defining your craft. And in doing so, even if you don't get the outcome that you wanted, even if you don't get the promotion, as I was saying earlier, you have confidence on the other side of it. And you could choose to walk and like go elsewhere if you wanted. Right. So it's like win-win. You get the outcome, great. If not, it's a big market out there.
I appreciate that focus on the craft and letting us understand how you've crafted your own career. So thank you for coming on the show, Disha.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was lovely to be here.
Tisha, that was great.
That's it for The Blind Ambition. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star rating and a review. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.